Hi, Angela Wolf here. We are back to the wrap dress, and this time we're adding a ruffle. This dress is out of silk charmeuse. It'd be great for dinner. It'd even be a good bathrobe. Make it shorter out of a cotton, and you got a bathing suit cover up. So let's see how this works. So again, I'm starting with just the basic pattern, and these ruffles will be attached all the way to the front edge and around the front. So let's talk a little bit about ruffles, because you can make your own. The best ruffle is a circle with a circle in the middle. And let me just explain that a little bit. You could take a circle that wraps, and you might have seen this on some patterns. So there's a ruffle as well. What's the difference? If all of your ruffles have the same circumference in the center, then your ruffle will be equal all the way around the garment. This ruffle here, the further out this edge goes, the less of a ruffle you have. So you can experiment with it. So let's just take a look at what I have here. There's a few things. Here's one ruffle, and you can see how once this is held up, see how it just kind of, this is a shorter one. This would be great for a neckline maybe, or a wrist, but that's what it looks like. If you want more ruffle, what you can do is you can gather a basting through here and gather it. So let's keep going. Here is the ruffle with this on the tip. This is where on our, to go back to the pattern, this will be attached right here. All right, so let's talk about sewing these. I have a couple here. How do you connect these? I'm gonna connect this with a French seam. You could also use a serger, you could use, there's a lot of options, but a French seam will cover this up because you can't have a ruffle if you want them all to be circles. You're gonna need to attach these to get around the dress. So the first thing I've done, I'm just gonna move this pattern out of the way and we'll go show you how to sew this. Here are the two long ruffles. Notice silk charmeuse is really slippery, and also both sides look like right sides. So I put X's on the wrong side of the fabric. Yes, I used wrong sides together to stitch because we're doing a French seam. The other thing I want to point out is when using silk charmeuse, you might want to grab a pair of serrated scissors. It grabs the fabric a little bit better than just regular scissors. So what I've done is I've already started my French seam. I have wrong sides together. From the right side of the fabric, I've stitched. I'm going to trim down to about 1/4 inch. And press this. A little bit of steam. When you're using silk, you might want to consider using a press cloth, depending on your iron. And then, now I've gone to, this is the wrong side of the fabric, so I pressed it, gone to the wrong side of the fabric, and I'm going to give it another pressing here. Just like that. There you go. And now this gives me a nice crisp crease where when I stitch along here, my ruffles are starting to attach. So let's take this over to the sewing machine, and then we're gonna go to the serger. All right, to finish my French seam, just gonna line this up. So you're at about 1/4 inch for your seam allowance. With silk charmeuse, you'll wanna use a smaller needle, maybe a size 10, and then stitch to the other end. Little back stitch. I'm using a contrasting thread so you can see this. There's my seam, and now I have attached 2 ruffles. I'll give that a good pressing. But now let's go to the serger, because how are you going to hem this? Well, you have a few options, but one of my favorite is on the serger. So here I've set up the machine for a rolled hem. Refer to your manual for your serger because everyone has different directions. But for this one, I actually had to remove the stitch finger. I adjusted the tensions for the needle. I'm using the right needle, not the left needle. So it's a narrow overlock stitch. It's really a rolled hem. This, I've changed these 2 tensions, these increased, and a few other settings, but again, refer to your manual. I'm just gonna start, I'm gonna show you how to finish this edge. Line this up. I'm using a different colored threads. You can see this, by the way, although this might be kind of cute with the pink and the blue. Get my hand out of the way here. I'm just going to get it started, and I want to show you how I hold my hand, because when you're serging this fabric is so slippery that quite often, if you've ever done this for a scarf, it will slide off and you have to get back on. So what I do is I put my one hand over here pushing. I'm going to exaggerate this so you can kind of see. So I'm actually pushing the fabric behind, but not pushing it out. And then this side, I'm pushing this way. And I'm letting the machine and the feed dogs do its job. And you can see it's doing a really nice rolled hem here. One more thing is if you're using a really thin fabric like this, use this knob up here. If your fabric is puckering or you're getting skip stitches, first of all, check your needle, but then this knob here will make your presser foot go higher or lower. Turn it to the left if it's pulling your fabric. That will loosen that tension up. So I'm just gonna do a little bit more. And you can see I'm pulling this way and pulling this way. And there's my rolled hem. Very easy to do. All right, so now let's go back to the sewing machine, and I'm gonna show you how to attach this. So here I have the rolled hem not finished, and if this is my sample of my dress, I chose to use just a plain cotton fabric because I thought you'd be able to see this a little bit better. So if this is the right side, and then you want to attach your ruffle, on this particular dress, this ruffle will start right at the top here. So you're going to go wrong sides together. Whatever your seam allowance for this is a 1/2 inch. And if you're making your own ruffles, just give yourself a 1/2 inch. You could also do a 1/4 if you don't have a lot of fabric. Now this, I don't pin this in place. I start to stitch and I lift my hand up and place the ruffle around. So we're gonna go around the front and I'll just show you this. I'll do this slowly. Try to keep my hand out of the way. And stitch. I'm lifting up and I'm placing this on the edge. So you're really just touching this every 2 inches about, just to keep this out of the way. If I keep the ruffle and my hand out of the way, you'll be able to see, right? All right, slide this way. Again, just slide it to the edge. And what I'm doing is if I slide that to the edge, if I try to go way down here and pin, what happens? It pulls that out of whack. So again, I'll just go a little bit further. And depending on what kind of sewing machine you have, you might have a setting where you can just make it stitch a little bit slower, and then you don't have to worry about accidentally stitching off the fabric or going too fast. Again, it's kind of a messy thing, huh? It's really at the front corner when you're going around that curve is the hardest part. After that, it's a breeze. All right, now we're getting into the straight. I would still go a little bit slower because this fabric is so slippery. The first time it accidentally gets tucked under and you got to rip out a stitch, just know I'm winking with you. Because I've done that. All right, so I'm just going to stop here because I want to show you how to finish this entire seam. So there you go. There is your ruffle on the edge. Very easy to do. If it was a shirt or a dress, the next step I would do is I would go through and finish this with a serger, like a 3-thread overlock stitch. All right, and I'm going to go back up here and press it. Okay, and this is what I did with this dress. I pressed it all the way around, and then we're going back to the sewing machine. You have 2 options. You could just let this hang then and let it be like that, but I always like to keep my seam allowances not flipping around, especially after it's dry cleaned or maybe you're washing your silk. So the next step that I do is I go right along here, right on the edge, and just do a little stitch. It's right on the edge of my ruffle. This is an option, by the way. But I did this on my bathing suit cover-up because I didn't want that seam allowance going all over. So you could either do it on the ruffle, like I'm showing you here, and you would have the same color thread, so you'd barely see it. Or you could have pressed this going into the dress. And if you did that into the dress, then your top stitching, and I'll just do this edge right here. So I'm giving you a couple different options here, whatever your flavor is. This one, again, if I press that seam allowance towards the dress and do some stitching there, you can't see that stitching because it's in cream color. But what that does is that keeps the whole seam allowance into the dress, and your ruffle is completely free. All right, so let's take a look at the finished dress. Here's the ruffle. Of course, this is with the color of thread that matches. It's all the rolled hem, and see how beautifully that drapes? I'm just gonna untie this so you can get a better look here. So this attached from the front edge. I put the belt on after I put the ruffle on, so then the ruffle will be outside of that belt. And then on the inside, the ruffle went all the way around the bottom hem, all the way up again to the top finished edge. And then again, I put the belt on after I put the ruffle on. Wrap this around and through. And that's how simple it is to add ruffles. Again, this could be for evening wear, a beach cover-up, you name it. It just depends on the fabric. Have fun with this one. In the next episode, we're gonna talk about another style wrap dress. I think you're gonna like it.